Good evening, it's Dave at All Things Important Reviews. Please smash that like button and please hit the subscribe button for more awesome watch content. I've been wanting to do a comparison review of these two watches for a while. I finally got around to doing it because they are super popular and they are regarded by many as the best Rolex Submariner homage watch options that you can buy, and I do to a large degree. Agree with that in terms of the ones you can buy off AliExpress. On the left, we've got the SN017 version 3 with the upgraded clasp. This is by San Martin. And on the right, we have, I'm just getting the product code because it's got a funny product code. It's L6005 by Cronos. And they are both basically 40mm nominal diameter size, obviously stainless steel bracelets. Both I've decided to buy in a blue, and both of them have 200-meter water resist. And they're both homages to the Submariner, the Rolex Submariner. Now, the watches do have some quite important differences, but I'm going to go through each one and I'm going to explain which one I prefer, and then at the end I'm going to make an assessment about which one I believe is the best overall. They're both automatic, obviously, with they do have different movements in each, which we'll talk about later. But to me, the movement is the least at these cheaper kind of, lower end automatics, in the sense of cheaper compared to, more expensive automatics from Victorinox, Hamilton, Seiko, etc. On the more mid to higher end stuff, before you get to places like Tag Heuer and Rolex and Omega and all that. They are still obviously on the cheaper end, so the movements on these cheaper watches for me are not that important because they're all pretty similar and pretty poor, really. But people will disagree around that. Just trying to find out why it's struggling to focus. Right, so let's start off with sizing. Now, I've measured both of these watches prior to starting this video, and I can confirm the San Martin is, in my model, only 12.6 millimeters thick. This is 12.6 millimeters thick, whereas the Cronos is about 13 mil thick. However, most of that thickness, additional thickness from the Cronos, is coming, if you can see, it's coming from the sapphire crystal being proud of the bezel, whereas on the San Martin it's only a little bit proud. On the Cronos it is probably 0.5 millimeter to a full millimeter prouder, which accounts for a lot of the thickness differences. Well, it accounts for, I don't think the case, although the case does look a tiny bit thicker on the Cronos, just looking there now. But yeah, that has a tiny effect of it feeling thicker on the wrist, a tiny bit. But part of the reason why the Cronos feels bigger on the wrist is because of its end-link to end-link dimension. So the thicknesses are very similar. This is 12.6 versus 13. The lug to lug is about 47.7 and about 47.5 on the Cronos. However, the end link to end link dimension is about 52 or 51.8, I think, on the Cronos, on my model, and on this it's only 50.4. So the San Martin on the wrist feels smaller. The San Martin feels smaller because it's thinner and the end link to end link is smaller. It does feel smaller very slightly. So the head of the watch, I prefer the feel of the head of the watch on the San Martin. That's not to say either feel top heavy, they don't. Both don't feel top heavy, but I prefer the feel of the top of the head of the watch, the case of the San Martin personally. And furthermore, the real Rolex Submariner, I believe, has dimensions closer to this I mean, some Rolex Submariners, I don't know of the absolute latest model of the 41mm, but some of them had only like 12.1, 12.2mm thick, making them super, super comfy. Having said that, I've seen some at 12.9, 12.8mm thick. Now, the thickness of these big case watches, because it has a big supporting maxi style case, it does affect it, you see. Whereas if you was to buy a normal 40mm watch, they would feel way smaller than these sizes, because the way that Rolex and these watches that copy them have done it, they've put a big fat supporting case, and it has downsides and benefits of doing that. One downside is that if you make the watch too thick, it feels too overall uncomfortable on the wrist, which is why I don't like the 43mm versions of this watch. It's too big for me as an all-day watch, I believe. So size-wise, I'm going to give it to San Martin for the case, not the bracelet, which we'll talk about later, because the bracelet thicknesses on the San Martin, I believe, are too thick compared to this one, which is better. So that's the sizing out of the way. The bezel diameters is very similar. I think they're both 40.1, something like that. They're very, very similar sizes. So, you know, the bezel size is just the same, really. But one thing to note is you can get quite a bit of variance. On these cheap AliExpress manufacturers, you can get quite a high amount of variance in sizes, thicknesses, etc. But the truth is, you can also get that on a 12 grand Rolex. So I've seen some Rolexes that have differences in thicknesses and all kinds of stuff. So again, you know, you can get watches that are different, that are the same model. Now let's talk about the dial and the bezel. So first of all, the bezel on the San Martin is ceramic. Beautiful, beautiful feel to it. Not difficult to turn, but not too easy either. Let's turn it on the Cronos. That, to me, it's really silky smooth, but it's almost too easy. I feel as though the Cronos is too easy to turn, so I'm going to give the bezel win, personally, to the San Martin. I think the bezel is better on the San Martin. It's harder to turn, you get a more crisper feel, and it feels more like I would expect a dive bezel to feel. That's not to say it's bad at all. They're both ceramic, so they both get top marks for the material, but I prefer the San Martin bezel. Talk about the crystal. The crystal is the same. It's both sapphire crystal, so it's super scratch resistant. Obviously, we've already talked about the thickness. I don't know why they've decided to do it, but on the Cronos, they've decided to make it prouder of the bezel by a significant amount. I don't know why they've chosen that. Does it improve water resistance when they do that? I don't know. I wouldn't do it. I prefer it to be flush, or as close as flush as possible to the bezel. So I prefer the San Martin. Let's talk about the dials. The dials have a sunburst blue, which looks a bit purpley, as you can clearly see on the San Martin. On the Cronos, they have a matte, or at least they have like a blocky blue that's not, a blocky colour, sorry, that is not sunburst. I prefer, well, again, it depends. I would like to have a variety, so it all depends on the watch. Now, the real Rolex Smurf has a, or had, because I don't think it's been discontinued now, that was a white gold model. That one had a matte dial, or a solid colour dial. It did not sunburst. Whereas the Hulk, what Rolex do, did have a sunburst, and some of the blueses and the other two-tone Submariners have a sunburst. So again, it's just personal preference. I prefer on this watch, I probably would have preferred it to have been a solid colour. So I'll give, and just talking about the dial, they both got the Mercedes hands. I think that the dial probably does look better on the Cronos. I think it looks more professional, the way they've done the logo. It looks superior. I think even though the magnification is definitely better on the San Martin, you can clearly see the 27 is bigger than the 11. Again, on the Cyclops, I don't use them. I just like to have them as that feature, but I don't use the date windows on watches because I've got my phone. I also think the San Martin logo is not as good as Cronos is. Having said that, Cronos have not put it big enough on the dial. Personally, I would have liked to have seen the logo bigger and the Cronos maybe a little bit smaller or a bit further down. And whereas the San Martin, I quite like the hexagon thing, but it is a bit childish. And they've tried to smash San Martin in a small little, you know, object there. So I'm going to give the dial, I'm going to give it to the Cronos. Now the colours, this is a small little change. So the colours, again, I bought it in blue and it's described as a blue off Cronos. This is also described as a blue, obviously, off San Martin. But the Cronos blue is more like, it's like the edge of a teal to a blue. It's, you know, it's not a super punchy ocean or cobalt blue. Whereas this is a really beautiful, like cobalt, deep, you know, punchy, vibrant blue. And I prefer that blue. That's the blue that I would expect it to be if you bought a blue watch. This has too much, even though you can't really see green, it just doesn't look like a punchy blue. It looks subdued, very subdued. And personally, for my taste, if I'm going with a blue watch, I want it to look deep blue. Or like you know, even navy blue. This one doesn't even look navy. It's in between. It's weird. It's got a weird blue. So for me, I prefer, but this is only a colour thing, but I prefer the San Martin's colour of blue, definitely, personally. But the dial, I would have preferred it if they did it in a solid blue. So I'd prefer the dial of the Cronos. But the overall colours, I prefer the Cronos. Interestingly, the San Martin do two tones as well, and I'm going to get one. The two tones are probably the best to get, because it kind of tones down a bit some of the blue whilst also looks more dressy. I think the two tones are beautiful, but Cronos don't offer it yet in a two-tone, so that's a negative. So for me, the winner is of the colours is definitely the San Martin if you're picking blue. However, if you're picking with like a grenade dial, if you're picking the blacks, then Cronos for colours probably. Well, actually no, they would be equal, but you can't get two-tone in the Cronos. I prefer the two-tone, so I'm going to give the winner on that one to San Martin. But San Martin do not offer a grenade dial as far as I'm aware, but again, both of them offer a custom dial. If you're going to buy it in black, I personally would prefer to see it with some red on it, so I would only buy it in a custom dial with a red, some kind of red markings on the dial if you're buying it in black and silver, because I think it's boring. That's why I suggest picking them up in two tones, but the Cronos don't do two-tone. So the Cronos I would get in a grenade dial black with maybe a green bezel, or I'd just get it in all black but with the grenade dial. Right, so then let's talk about the crowns. The crowns on both feel very good. Both are excellent. I've had no issue with either. What time is it now? Yeah. Feels very sure. They're both obviously screw downs. So crowns, they're both signed as well. That has like the timer logo thing, and the San Martin has the shark. So crowns, I'm going to give it equal. Now then, okay, we'll quickly do case backs. The case backs are boring. They're both basically the same, completely plain. That is a downside to both of them. Miles prefer the Pagani case backs that are not plain. It's just a stainless steel piece of metal for the case backs on both. That is a negative. Definitely prefer, you know, something, a logo, the model number or whatever, but they don't have it on either. But the real Rolex also is totally plain and boring. So equal case backs. Now let's talk about the bread and butter, which is, or I should say the meat and potato, which is the bracelet. Right, the bracelets, look, this is San Martin on the left, this is Cronos on the right. Look at the thickness differences. For some reason, I don't know why they've decided to do it, San Martin have chosen very thick links, like 3.5mm or 3.2mm thick links all the way through. They don't taper, or if they do taper, it's a tiny, tiny bit. The Cronos have chosen the superior, in the sense of fit and feel, like 2.5, 2.8mm thick links, which is what they should be. They should not be much above 3mm, and they should taper down. Trying to get it to focus there. It's not going to focus, don't think. Can you see on the Cronos I'm holding now? Much thinner links. Now this has an effect. It has an effect, having the links so thick, even though they do taper beautifully, both of them, having the links so thick on the San Martin affects the overall feel and fit of the watch as an all-day, everyday piece. So, and as well, the clasps are different. It has a double flip lock deployant clasp, thick swing arms on the San Martin, loads of micro adjust, 6 micro adjust slots. It is a heavy duty clasp. It is a brilliant clasp. It's one of the best clasps I've ever used. You've got your push buttons. It really does. It is a fantastic clasp. But another problem with the San Martin that you don't get on the Cronos is on the fly adjustment. I mean, you can't do any on the fly adjustment if you're bothered about that. There is no dives extension or anything on the San Martin. I'll let you know a little secret. On the San Martin, they do a new model called the SN019, which I'll be purchasing soon, that has a quick adjust sliding clasp, which this Cronos has. The Cronos has a clasp very similar to the Rolex. It is obviously a flip lock still, with a trigger system very similar to Rolex, and it also has the sliding on the fly, what Rolex calls glide lock. It has a very similar system that works very, very well. And in fact, they've even put inside of it, Cronos have even put inside of it, I don't think you can see this, they've put ceramic pins in it, so it rolls on a kind of ceramic pin thing. So the ceramic won't move or change shape or whatever like stainless steel would. So it's superior. So again, excellent. The clasp is superior. The bracelet and the clasp is superior on the Cronos. I don't think there's any question about that. Having said that, I still love this clasp and I could happily have this clasp. The issue for me with this watch, the main issue with this watch is the bracelet. It's the thickness of them links, and number two, the sharpness of the bracelet edges and the case. They are too thick. That is sharp. The edge of that case is sharp. It is. It's too sharp. That would hurt that. I could actually rip my jeans. It's that sharp. Well, I couldn't, but you know what I mean. That edge there, that corner there. But just the bracelet edges on the San Martin is too sharp. On the Cronos, they do not suffer from this problem. So the clear winner for me for bracelet is the Cronos. The clasp is better and the bracelet is better. Now hopefully this issue is rectified in the SN019. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could get a watch polisher. You could either send it off, it costs you a lot of money, and you could ask them to put a bevel, well, you know, you could ask them to round off these edges slightly, and that would resolve the issue obviously in terms of sharpness. When I say sharpness, it's not that it's sharp on the bracelet. It's just not, it's just a little bit sharper than what it should be. But the issue for me is actually the thickness of the links. They're too thick for an all day, everyday wear. It becomes, after about 5 or 6 hours, just becomes a little bit more uncomfortable, which is a shame, because they should never have picked, they should never have purchased them at this size. They're too thick, in my opinion. However, because of the the end-link to end-link distance on this watch and the thickness being thicker on the Cronos, it still feels like a very comfy watch, the San Martin. And you know, a perfect blend would be the San Martin head with this bracelet, but they're not interchangeable. But that is super comfortable. That's the Cronos on the wrist. I'll just show you the San Martin as well. Oh, I should really talk about the movements as well, but I mean, to me, the San Martin has more of a personality in that the logo does look different than the Rolexes, and you know, whereas this does look more like a Rolex, the Cronos. But they've not bothered to sign the clasp, which is silly. They should have done Cronos, so I don't know why the hell they've not done that. But yeah, the bracelet is comfier on the Cronos, definitely. Having said that, both of these watches are not as comfortable as the Pagani. The Pagani ones that I've had, the PD1661, are both comfier than these watches. But they're not as good as these watches, but they are comfier. So, ultimately, the movement, the Cronos has, you can get it in either a PT 5000, which is a superior movement to the Seiko NH35 or 38, whatever you call them. Again, movements for me are not that important, because if they don't have a significant power reserve above 44 hours or 40 hours, I don't really care. The accuracy on an automatic is still going to be quite poor. You're going to be losing up to, like, you know, 30 seconds a day sometimes. So again, I'll put the movements in the box below, but the movements are not amazing. Again, that's up for debate if it's something that you're really bothered about. I buy these watches for the look and feel. I don't buy them for the accuracy. But the Cronos, for what it's worth, as far as I'm aware, the Cronos has the superior movements, and you can get a Solita one that's more expensive, or an ST something one in the Cronos that is more expensive if you want to go down that route. I don't care about that, so I don't pay more for them, because the movement's not important to me personally. At this moment in time with the technologies, in a few years' time, it may be true that Rolex's kind of, you know, superlative chronometer, amazing time accuracy of even 5 seconds a day difference on an automatic, then if they become cheaper to buy, that technology, then by all means I will be bothered about it. But when you're losing 15 to 30 seconds a day, who cares if one of the movements is a little bit better? It's not against a quartz. They're both crap for accuracy. So it's a strange one. Overall, it is really tough to give which one. I think as an all-day wear, the Cronos overall is probably comfier because of the bracelet, but I still do love the San Martin. I do still love it, and I do still wear it. And I am going to be giving this, well, I am going to be selling this one because I'm not convinced on the blue. I don't like it because of the particular shade. And I'm going to wait for Cronos to do a two-tone, or I'm going to pick this one up in the grenade dial. I think the grenade dial will be super. But I am also going to sell this one, I think, and I'm going to swap it for the two-tones, because I think two-tone black and gold or two-tone blue and gold is just superb. And also I'm going to pick up the SN019, which has the updated clasp, you know, a sliding clasp, just like the one you've just seen on the Cronos, and it has thinner links. I'm hoping that is number one. They're going to be the number one for me. At the minute, with everything that's said, I'm going to give it a draw. This is probably the comfier as an all-day round watch, but I prefer the look of this one, and I prefer the feel of the top head of this one. So I'm going to give it a draw. The build quality of the San Martin has blown me away, but they let themselves down on making it so sharp that is a letdown. They should have rounded these off, definitely, but I am going to give it a draw. So if you want to buy them, there's affiliate links below. You know what the score is. I make a tiny bit of commission at no extra cost to you. Seriously, it's difficult for the price you pay, which is less than, well, with VAT and that now, it might be over 200 quid, but I got them both less than 200 quid. Actually, no, I didn't. I got this one less than 200 quid. I got this one for about 175 at the time, and I got this one for about 250, which is not cheap, but I got it. But they may have gone up now because of the whole, you know, VAT issue and Brexit and all that. So again, you can't really go wrong with both. You could easily swap this out. If you don't like bracelets, you can swap it out for a rubber band. They'd both be super comfortable on a rubber band. Definitely do that if you're not a bracelet guy. But yeah, both fantastic watches. I'm hoping the updated San Martin is the king. I am hoping that it is the king. We'll find out soon. Thanks for checking my channel out. Thanks a lot for the support. Let's get to 1,000 subs before Christmas if we can. I'll try and post more. Cheers, it's Dave.